Hello everyone. In this video we will discuss which is better for playing at the table, frictionless long pips without sponge or regular long pips with friction. I know that there are fans of frictionless pips. Some even played with the ancient no-friction pips from Dr. Neubauer. So, let me emphasize an important point right away. It cannot be said that modern frictionless pips are better than regular ones for playing at the table. I've tried many different pips and can say that all pimples have their pros and cons. You can love frictionless pips, but that doesn't make them the universal superweapon for playing at the table. But they are cool. So now, I will provide you with objective information, and you can try to figure out what works best for you. So, friends, if you have experience with the ancient frictionless pips from Dr. Neubauer, those pimples no longer exist, and there are no plans to make them. But we've searched around the world and found a new type of frictionless pips, a modern version. They differ from the doctor's pips, and I would say they differ significantly. We will make a separate video for you about the differences between modern and ancient frictionless pips a little later. By the way, while we're making interesting and useful videos and reviews for you, feel free to visit our TT Maximum store more often for your shopping. It would be the best way to thank us for our videos. So, let's say you're currently pondering which pimples are better for playing at the table. You probably already have some well-known pips with grip. Maybe it's the Inher Neptune or something from the doctor's pimples. But you don't have frictionless pips. And you can't decide whether to order frictionless pips or not. Should you spend money and a lot of time getting used to frictionless pips? Would they not suit you? We have 2 points here. There are many different regular pimples, and they have very different properties. You've probably already gotten used to some specific properties. The selection of frictionless pips currently consists of only 2 models. And most likely, in terms of speed and softness, they will differ significantly. You'll stick them on, and probably there will be strong discomfort. You will decide that they don't suit you and will want to take them off. It might seem like an unsolvable problem, but you will likely manage to handle it. Play, get used to them, and the discomfort will go away, either in a couple of days or a couple of weeks. The second point is the technique, tactics, and opportunities that frictionless pips offer. If you already have a technique and habit of playing a certain style with regular long pips without sponge, then when switching to no friction pips, your ability to hit the ball on the table may get worse sharply, and with that, your results in the game. Because playing with them requires a different technique, and the tactics should be slightly different as well. Let's say you figure out the technique. You play, analyze, and gradually transform your technique. You can get used to the properties, the sensations, and the new technique. The last question remains, do frictionless pips suit your style of play? What can be done with regular long pips without a sponge? Serve, return of serve, block, chop block, aggressive pushing, attack against backspin, topspin, flat hit. Some enthusiasts can even do a topspin with some pimples. From a far distance from the table, you can confidently defend with a chop and distant block. From the middle zone, some fans can even occasionally hit with a counter drive. Of course, all of this will not be available with just one rubber. Typically, pimples do some things well and some things poorly. What can our modern frictionless pips do? Not everything on this list. For example, frictionless pips are uncomfortable for defense. They are just uncomfortable, and their effectiveness in defense is mediocre. Let me explain for those curious. They are stiff and slippery. Therefore, in defense, the ball will often fly into the net or too high. Because frictionless pips are very sensitive to the angle at which the ball hits the racket. When playing at the table, the ball's angle doesn't differ much. So you often put the racket at the same angle, sometimes adjusting it if the ball is particularly high or low. But generally, you're used to quickly placing the racket at the same angle, such as perpendicular to the table. But when defending, the ball comes at you in various positions, with different heights and angles. And it's hard to set the correct racket angle. Also, topspin is impossible. Counter drive is also impossible. You can't do counter drive against balls with topspin or no spin. But you can do a counter drive against backspin. The ball needs to be high, preferably significantly above the net. Then, your chances of hitting the table are better. In the video, you can see how the player hits the table well. That's because they know how to play. Plus, it's training, and they consistently receive the same balls without any stress. In a competitive game, it will be much harder. A flat hit is very difficult to execute. It's more likely that you will make flat pushes against backspin, not flat hits. The other technical elements with no friction pips are possible. Serve, return of serve, block, chop block, aggressive pushing, and attack against backspin. Now let's compare them with regular pimples. Serve. The same thing. Just push the ball or imitate a chop. Return of serve is more primitive, with almost no ability to change the spin. Essentially, you just set the racket and try to direct the ball to a planned spot, either short or long, while trying not to play too high. It's easier to return spinny serves, but it's unlikely that your opponent will serve spinny serves to your pimples. Friction pips can cunningly alter the spin with side movement or chop, but frictionless pips cannot. So, with no friction pips, you will have to aim carefully at inconvenient spots for your opponent when receiving. Block against topspin with frictionless pips will return more backspin. In other words, the reverse will be more. How good it is, you decide. The speed on the block will be significant with frictionless pips. If you're used to slow pimples, it will be uncomfortable at first. But overall, this is a small issue. You'll get used to it and be comfortable. Frictionless pips are stiff, the speed is fairly stable, so after getting used to it, you will hit the table normally, like the player in the video. By the way, when you get used to it and adjust your block technique, you may find it easier to do both short and long blocks. This is because the speed of frictionless pips is more predictable and linear. You can play with both regular pimples and frictionless pips with an attacking blade. There's no issue with that. It's a matter of preference. Even with a fast blade, you can do a short block. It's all about technique. By the way, you may have noticed that the attacker in the video consistently hits the table without problems against no friction pips. And it may frustrate you, as you probably want your opponents to run away in horror at the mere sight of no friction pips. Yes, there are no mistakes. Because these players have good technique. It's training, and they are doing the same thing over and over. They know what to expect, so there's little errors. Next, a chop block with frictionless pips will give more reverse than a simple block. You won't be able to add your own spin if you move the racket sideways. Aggressive block is difficult to perform. The pimples are stiff, and there's no springiness. So a fast block is possible, but it requires a different technique. Aggressive pushing with no friction pips will probably be slightly more difficult due to their stiffness and slipperiness. Initially, at least. But you'll get used to it, and it will be fine. Along with blocking, it will be your main technical element. And the last element, attacking against backspin. Of course, it is an important element when playing with no friction pips. I believe you will use it more often than with regular pimples, because after your block, opponents will often slowly push the ball, and backspin will come to you, which you will be able to attack. And I almost forgot to mention the issue of destructiveness. What do you think, which pimples are more disruptive, frictionless pips or regular ones? If you answered frictionless pips, I don't agree with you. In my opinion, the destructiveness of long pips comes from the unusual, unpredictable ball with unexpected characteristics. Unexpected characteristics arise when regular pimples transform the spin differently and push the ball with varying force due to their springiness. And that's when attackers make mistakes. And no friction pips don't really change the spin. They just give more reverse and make it easier to play against spins. So, in terms of destructiveness, they are less so. If creating more backspin after a block is important in your game, then it can be said that frictionless pips are more destructive. By the way, friends, click like and subscribe. We provide useful videos and good rubbers, and you give us likes and purchases. Now, let's summarize. When is it better to choose no frictionless pips over regular ones? First, if you're curious and want to try them. Second, if you're fully focused on playing at the table. This means you plan to block and push with the pimples. It will work especially well if you can attack with another rubber. In addition to scoring points and having an interesting game process, this will help you reduce situations where your opponent has a good attacking position and you have to step away from the table. I remind that no friction pips allow you to return balls to the table in defense. But it's more difficult than with regular pips. So, defending with frictionless pips is an unfavorable position. Frictionless pips are also suitable if you want to build your game around blocking against topspin, creating backspin, and subsequent attacks with pimples or inverted rubber. Overall, if you want to block and create strong backspin, then frictionless pips are a better choice than regular pips. They are also suitable if you build your game on precise play with pimples. That is, you try to direct the ball according to your scheme, get comfortable balls, and finish off your opponent. For this style of play, no friction pips are perfect. That's all. If you have any questions on this topic, feel free to ask them in the comments under the video. Goodbye.